Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 176 of the Citrix Session. I'm your host, Andy Whiteside. Been a long time. Haven't hosted one of these in a while. Bill's somewhere. I don't know if he's on vacation or if he's traveling for work. My
No,
guess is,
he's in South Florida. Yeah, we got
oh,
a
that's
briefing we're
right.
doing
That's
tomorrow.
right. How did I
Yeah.
even forget that? Yeah, so Bill is working for sure. In fact, he's doing something that I'm super passionate about, and that's our 4 times a year. Did I say four? Yes, I said four. 4 times a year, Citrix technology briefing that we host. It's kind of like an executive briefing, but it's really meant for a group, kind of a group field trip, is how I look at it. And Bill is heading down there for that today. I guess he's probably knee deep in it at this point.
It's tomorrow, so I think he's probably on his way. I think
Okay.
there might be something tonight, but yeah, the fun kicks off tomorrow.
Listen, if you're a Citrix customer and you want to know more from the program team, the platform team, people that live at HQ all week long, come to one of these things with us. I promise you'll learn a ton about what's going on currently and in the future at Citrix. And there's a lot of good stuff going on. We're going to talk about something today that's kind of mind-blowing and game-changing. But I got Geremy Meyers with me. Jeremy runs all the account technology specialist, I think, for the US. Is that the right answer?
Uh, Strategist, it's on the East Coast, some of Canada, and this year it's actually a bit of the North Central US too. So I got
Okay.
some Wisconsin, some Minnesota, a little Chicago.
And those people are interesting to me because those are the ones that are probably most in alignment with what we are as a company. I want to get us closer to talking to those folks because all right, here we go. You ready? Uh,
Let's start.
I know they graduated with 4.0s from college 5 years ago, but there's still a lot of things that we know they don't know.
Well, listen, even then, we've got some folks who've been at Citrix for a long time and they know a lot of stuff. But, the thing they don't know is, there's a lot in the ecosystem. Right before we hopped on, we talked about NVIDIA. Today, we're going to talk about Google. There's just a lot going on in the space, and it's too
Yeah.
much for one person or one ATS or even a group of folks to.
It's too much for one person that's been doing it for 30 years. We have to have a whole
Yeah.
team of people over here to do it. And even then, we don't know it all. But man, it's a lot. But big opportunity to partner with you and your team is what I'm really pointing out there. And
You know what? Don't let me forget that, because at the end of this podcast, we're going to circle back to that because we're actually going to roll through this with a joint customer. Actually, should be fun.
okay. All right, well, let me share my screen here and I'll bring up the blog from today. So today's blog is from a guy named Hector Lima. I've heard of Hector. It's from, I don't know, March 18th, so roughly a week or so ago, and it's related to
Hmm.
your Citrix Unite conference. The title of it is Welcome Google Chrome Enterprise Premium into the Citrix platform. Be interested to see what you mean by platform here in a minute. But let me break this down real quick. Welcome Google Chrome Enterprise. I'm going to put the word browser premium into the Citrix platform. Jimmy, why'd you pick this blog?
Well, for two reasons. Number one, it's Google. There's a partnership here that is pretty large for us. And second of all, from a product perspective, there's a big integration that is
Yeah.
happening. A lot of customers will get this on day one, depending on what you own today.
Yeah.
But there's some investment here, some joint engineering that's going on that
Yeah.
is related to the browser, and this seems to be this is the hot space in IT right now.
Yeah. Jeremy, how many times in your career at and around Citrix have you heard, when is Microsoft going to buy you?
I don't have that many fingers.
Yeah.
It's
A
bad, or
lot.
toes. It's a lot.
Right. I don't know if you have that many skin cells. No, that's probably not true. But, how many times since this announcement have you been asked, or probably prior to that as well, but how many times have you been asked if Google is going to buy Citrix?
Probably not as many, because I think a lot of folks are thinking hard on what that actually means.
Yeah.
I think Microsoft makes a lot of sense because
Yeah.
we've been doing this for 30 years, but I have had a few folks ask about Google too. Yeah.
Yeah, I say that because the two companies have worked around each other, next to each other. This is the first time I'm really, really, really seeing them work close with each other, and all of a sudden products start showing up within the other person's products.
There's this weird word called partnership, which a lot of times you're in the same space. And to your point, I think for the longest time, you know, delivering Google with Citrix, hosting Citrix on Google, those sorts of things made sense, but they were really kind of our own lanes.
Yeah.
And um, I'm not going to say we didn't jointly engineer things, but this is a whole nother level. So this is unique.
Well, as a partner that got involved with a client with like 5,000 Chromebooks and had to get the two companies together and fix some issues, it was there, but it wasn't there. But that's yet again the place where partners like us add value. I'm going to read the first line of the second paragraph. It says, "The news with Google is yet another way we at Citrix are following through on our commitment to provide continuous value add to our customers. All roads lead back to the investment in the platform." This is pretty good example of where Citrix is stepping outside of its internal lane and getting with someone who makes a lot of sense. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong here, but there's a lot of people that use the Chrome browser already, aren't there?
Tons. And I think that's definitely the opportunity for sure
Yeah.
is lots of enterprises are using the Chrome browser. A lot of enterprises are using the enterprise Chrome browser, meaning there's a lot of control and policy things that
Yeah.
you can do with that browser that we're going to tap into here. That's what this announcement's all about.
Yeah. So I will summarize it before we can go into it is Citrix is going to take something that's widely already used and make it better and more effective as part of the Citrix go-to-market approach. And I don't even know yet where it fits in the product set. We'll talk about that, I assume, at some point in this blog, or we will talk about it after the blog.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think you nailed it. We can probably wrap up early if you want.
All right, the benefits of doing this. Number one, they've got harnessing Chrome's world-class web browser. Can you walk me through that one?
So let's talk a bit about what Citrix has today, real quick. So before we get to the benefits, Citrix has virtual apps and desktops. We have DAS. We have virtualization delivery, delivering a virtual app, virtual desktop. Could be Windows, could be Mac, could be Linux. But of course, what a lot of customers are looking at are web and SaaS apps, right? And they don't necessarily want to do it with a hosted desktop, hosted browser, if you will. So Citrix has invested quite a bit of energy over the last few years in developing an enterprise browser. So it is Chromium based. So it's based on that same technology stack as Chrome, but it's our own browser, right? So Citrix engineering builds and packages and policy controls and does all the stuff, right?
Yeah.
That's been a use case for a long time. It's only going to get bigger as more customers are moving their workloads to web and SaaS, web being typically what we think of as like internally hosted websites, or SaaS being sort of external, think of like a Salesforce or a Workday or something like that, right? So, the idea is, can we create a browser that could do policy controls in the same way that I could do with my virtualization apps, right? And that's what Citrix had. You go to one spot, you go to Workspace app, boom. I click one icon, it launches a virtual desktop or, my line of business app. I click a different icon and it takes me to Workday, but running on a local enterprise containerized managed browser to hit that application
Yeah.
with the same poly controls across the board.
So,
So
Jeremy, give me one succinct reason why Citrix did this versus just continue to go to market with your own Chromium-based enterprise browser, which I assume is still going to be there.
it will be there for a time. I'll just say that. But I mean, you've already hit this nail on the head, Andy. Most enterprises, not all, most enterprises have Chrome deployed to an endpoint. Are they managing it? Not across the board, but most enterprises have Chrome deployed. This is a great way to tap into that and provide that same policy control. So that is what we're doing. We are integrating Chrome Enterprise browser, the enterprise platform, into the Citrix stack, and it'll be native.
So, true or false question. The enterprise browser space did not exist, let's say 3 years ago, and now it's a crowded space. True or false?
I would say I would say it's unclear. There are probably two big players. And then a lot of folks trying to grab onto it for sure.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. There's a lot of folks trying to grow. I think what you guys are doing here is very interesting because you're taking someone who has the predominant market share. In fact, I saw something like this at the IGEL conference last week, but you're taking someone that has the predominant market share, one of the two, right? In browsers, just in general in the enterprise, and you guys are going to try to make it better and make it more manageable and add the the IP that and the R&D that Google either won't or doesn't have time for. It's not all that dissimilar from the RDP, RDS Windows and Citrix story from back in the day.
I had not thought about it like that, but that's probably a pretty good parallel. I'm gonna steal that.
Yeah. Speaking of parallels, They have a similar, like they have their enterprise browser, right? They're all coming. All right. So that was the first one. The next one says delivering the next generation of secure application access with secure private access. I definitely want to hit on this one because this is probably what Google doesn't really have that you give them instantly.
So I guess there's probably two parts to what Citrix was calling the secure private access solution. Honestly, one piece of it was, secure private access, the sort of the VPN replacement feature. So, there's an architecture that would allow you from an endpoint access into internal websites without using a traditional VPN, right? So zero trust approach. Um, and that is thing number one. Thing number two was the enterprise browser that actually becomes bundled with workspace apps. So if you've got workspace app, and I forget the version that's out that includes this by default, but if you've got workspace app, you can right click on your icon in the taskbar and you can see Citrix Enterprise Browser. So you get the option there, right? We actually have
I've literally been doing it all through this call. I don't know, this meeting. I don't know if you've been able to see it on the shared screen or not, but I've been just bringing it up, over and over again, how you get to it.
Yep. Super simple. There's two ways to access it. You can launch it and run it standalone. So just right click Enterprise Browser. Believe it or not, we also have a tech preview version of an independent browser. So this is just enterprise browser that is not bundled with workspace apps. So if you're a company that has just web and SaaS apps, you could deploy that as well. It's a much smaller installer, as you might imagine. But anyways, that's thing number one. And thing number two, enterprise browser paired with SPA, and that is the solution. And what we are doing with this Google announcement is pairing the SPA, the VPN replace piece, with a managed Chrome browser, right? So effectively replacing the Citrix Enterprise browser long-term with the Chrome Enterprise browser, but including all of the policy controls and things that go along with enterprise browsers. To your point, what does Citrix get? We get way more policy control than you can with what we have today, right? And what does Google get? ZTNA, SPA, sort of VPN-less access. Yep.
It's a really smart. That's why I was talking about all the other players out there in the space. Instead of trying to take over everybody else's market share or some subset of it, just go with the market leader and make it better. Kind of like RDS, Microsoft for Terminal Services, and Citrix for a bunch of years.
Correct. Yeah.
I mean, that's basically where those workloads are going. It's just now we're, going to go be engaged there where those workloads are moving to anyway.
So we announced it last week, and I think this blog post came out, on the 18th? And so who gets this? When do they get it? So to take a step back, SPA, Secure Private Access, was bundled with our Citrix platform license. And this will continue to be bundled with your Citrix platform license. And as of March 18th, if you're a CPL customer, you're already entitled to it.
Yeah.
So it's not a future date.
Let's talk to that a little bit because you're incentivizing people to go after being a Citrix platform licensed customer or rewarding those who have. Just for clarity here, anybody of decent size, and by decent, I'm not going to put a number to that, but anybody who's willing to say they're going to use Citrix strategically in their organization can request to be nominated for being a Citrix platform licensed customer, can't they?
That's correct. Yeah. So I would go out to your partner, go out to your account team, and talk through it with them. Like, this is our use case. This is how we envision this. This is how we want to go. Hey, you know what? Take us through a proof of concept, proof of value, and help us quantify that. I think what's interesting about this is when we think through, and the third bullet point here is reducing costs, is let us help you think through where you can reduce some of those costs as well. So we're working with a customer now who can turn off a significant number of virtual desktops by going to this model and almost justify the cost of a transition to a CPL. That's thing number one. Thing number two, you've got customers who are already paying for the, I'm gonna get this right, Chrome Enterprise Platform Platinum license, that they could probably roll that renewal into the CPL and get the same functionality and more by simply, moving over that spend from Google to Citrix. And don't worry, Google's taken care of here, so you're not pissing off Google.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it makes a ton of sense. Like, this really is one of the most impactful, logical things that Citrix has done in a long time. And that doesn't mitigate some of the investments in the technology of late, because there's been a bunch. But from technology and business investment, this makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, and the one thing I haven't done yet is I haven't talked to customers who are leveraging CEP, so Chrome Enterprise Platinum. How are they accessing without an SPA type solution today? Like, what does that process look like?
I know,
Go
I
for
know,
it.
I know. Three-letter acronym that I hate. VPN.
VPN, VPN.
Ugh. All right, if you're listening, if your users, not your technical team, that I can get away with, but if your users in 2025 are still using a VPN, you're doing it wrong. A full VPN, like IPsec or whatever
Full
VPN.
tunnel. Yep.
Full tunnel VPN, giving them access to whatever you forgot to not give them access to. That is wrong. That's where the SPA stuff in a browser or some app strategy kicks in.
So I know this isn't about SPA specifically, the VPN piece, but let's talk about that for a second. So typically how those VPNs have worked and why this has been an issue in the past is when I open up a VPN without a lot of ACLs, access control lists, and filtering, my tunnel, for the most part, wide open to whatever I'm terminating to, right? So it's the data center, it could be a DMZ, whatever that looks like. It's a full tunnel typically. And so SPA kind of flips that on its head and goes, you can connect, but it's no access by default. And you've got to go turn access on a per app basis, per website basis, by the way, we support TCP apps as well. So we can still support not just web and SaaS, but listen, IT wants to use an RDB client, that's fine, but we're doing it by exception and it's 3389 as opposed to open the tunnel and give you access to everything.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it makes total sense now that we have the technology to do it. The VPNs almost should have never existed. It was a necessity thing, and security was an afterthought. Like real security, like security across the wire. That was the idea then, but that's not where the bad stuff happens now. Speaking of which, more to come from Google. It starts off with malware detection and prevention. That's something that maybe VPNs can do, but not at the level we're talking about here. What does this mean?
So there are policies that are native to Chrome Enterprise Platinum. I got to get this name right. That Enterprise browser doesn't have, right? So we can do some level of DLP, not a lot. We can do containerization, we can apply policies, but things like malware detection. Think about what your number one access point for malware is. It's the browser, right? So if we could block this in the browser, I mean, that would be pretty critical. Not just that, but phishing as well, right? So that would be thing number one. So although we're talking about potentially running this on an endpoint, a lot of value here, I would argue also do this within your Citrix sessions as well. I've had customers who have been impacted, not because it was a quote unquote Citrix issue. It's just something has happened within the Citrix session, which by the way, probably originated with from a browser. If we could stop that with, a managed browser with just inherent malware detection, that'd be huge.
Yeah, I mean, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Stay with me for a second, right? What you're doing in your physical desktop is good for your virtual desktop and vice versa as it relates to browsers. Browsers are bad. Browsers are very, very bad in terms of being security related risk, but they're also the future and really the current of most application access. It's a blessing and a curse.
100% a blessing and a curse.
And
that's why it's a target.
Well, let me clarify something you said. You're right. The browser's where the bad stuff comes, but the browser with that user that's empowered to do all kinds of stuff through the browser, that's where the really bad stuff happens, and that's where some of the more intelligent aspects of this kicks in. All right, malware detection. You mentioned the second one here, data loss prevention. Anything else to add about that one?
No, I think it's fairly straightforward. There's a lot of controls baked into CEP that they bring with us.
And here's where the beautifulness kicks in. Centralized management. This is where I expect you guys to do a lot with the Chrome browser solution.
Yeah, so here's what's interesting about this is, I think there are two ways to centrally manage this, right? So if you're doing this from BYO devices, there's one approach. If you're doing this from a corporate managed device, there's an entirely different way to do it. The policy controls work exactly the same. It's how are you managing the browser, right? So on the one hand, and maybe I'm doing this in a virtual desktop, maybe I'm doing this from a corporate issued laptop or desktop, I can push out a policy control that will affect, every single person who logs in and uses that browser on that machine versus in a BYO where I might have my profile that represents like my personal Gmail, right? Like I use Gmail, I'm using Chrome for that, but I might have a different profile that represents work. I can push out a policy that only impacts my work profile, doesn't touch my personal profile BYO, right? And for corporate managed, I could have something entirely different. I want to push down a policy that impacts anyone who uses that browser on that device.
Right. That's going to be really smart. And I'm assuming some of the other things you guys do, like, session recording and that type of thing, that's going to kick in maybe at some point too, based on this scenario.
I mean, there's a few things that might kick in, right? So, again, I don't know the detailed product roadmap, but think about session recording, think about app protection, right? So, again, screen scraping and key logging protection. And listen, Lord knows what the AI on the endpoint is going to bring us in the future too. But there's a lot we can bring to that browser. Yep.
And I'm already thinking like secure browser service that could be this, but very native and unknown to the user that it was even happening.
I would think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Last one here is secure private access integration. I think we've somewhat covered this, but do you want to make sure we did?
Yeah, that's the so again, that's the SPA part. That's the VPN-less zero trust piece that we talked about, where it talks about micro segmentation. What that means is just we can allow access on a per app, per website basis, and limit it to just that application. So again, this is way more eloquent in saying we're trying to restrict lateral movement, meaning once you're in, this is all you have access to, as opposed to a full VPN where I could bounce around once I got in the front door.
Right. So let me read the last paragraph here. With the integration of Citrix Chrome Enterprise Premium, the Citrix platform delivers yet again, now offering customers a streamlined, secure solution for managing web and SaaS apps. News is great implications. Continue working closely with the partnership with Google to bring applications and tools to customers who rely on day-to-day directly into the Citrix environment for those legacy x80. I'm adding this part for those legacy x86 application, including Windows OS, and those pure native SaaS apps, which is where we're all heading. Our grandkids, unless something happens between native SaaS apps and progressive web apps, our grandkids will never see a fat x86 application. Heck, my kids who are 22 they barely see them now.
I mean, if I'm telling you how the sausage is made, I don't even have virtual app. I'm lying. I do have a few virtual apps delivered to me as a Citrix employee, but most of what I access and how I access it is with a managed browser, the Citrix managed browser. I'm assuming at some point this year that will move over to a Chrome managed browser. So I'll just know what that is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably the only person at XenTegra that on a daily basis uses a VDI session. I do it from various devices all over the place. Most of the company's just native SaaS apps, and we're 13 years old, so we got to basically be born on SaaS apps.
Yep, and it feels weird to say, but as a Citrix employee, that is primarily my method of access is web and SaaS apps. Now, I've got quite a few web apps that are internally hosted that run my job, but
yeah. Well, and as a Citrix employee from 13 years ago, it was SaaS apps then in many cases, except it was through a published browser. So the world is, I don't want to say it's come full circle. It has, but at the same time, it's a different circle. That's the way I say it.
You got it.
Different world. How about that? Well, Geremy, thanks for jumping on and going through this. Is it's very timely, and hopefully people that listen get a lot of value out of it. Feel free to reach out to us, either Geremy Meyers or Andy Whiteside through LinkedIn, and happy to have a conversation. I guess do the XenTegra commercial here. I forgot to do at the beginning. We're doing a lot in this space, helping a lot of customers in places where other partners can't, other vendors can't, and we're just doing it to the point where we're helping and retaining a whole lot of customers doing it. If you're listening to this podcast, reach out to me via LinkedIn, and we'll find out how to get you connected with what we're doing. And at a minimum, Geremy, and I'll put this in your head for you and all your folks. At a minimum, if you're a Citrix shop today, as it relates to us, at least get a minimal support contract with us. It's like next to nothing. And if you need help at a moment's notice, I've got a team of experts that can jump on with you in no greater than 30 minutes to help you out. All right. Well, I'm done. Geremy, anything that we didn't cover you want to cover?
You know what? I did say I was going to circle back to this, but just to let you know, XenTegra is the tip of the spear on this too. So we're about to kick off a POC, whatever you want to call it, which is this technology for a customer that wants to go big on web and SaaS, right? So I'm not going to name drop, but I think we kick that off next week, Andy.
Oh, that's good. I didn't know.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think this will be with the Google stack too. So it should be fun.
Yeah, it should be. Well, we'll talk more about that after we hit the stop button. All right, sir. Thank you very much for your time. We'll look forward to doing it again in a week or two.
We'll see you next week.